I didn't want to have to do this, but y'all made me. Shakur Stevenson back at it again. You won't really believe what he had to say regarding his boy, Terence Crawford. Nevertheless, Boxing Ego is here to talk about it. In a brand new interview Shakur Stevenson had with Cigar Talk, he says that Bud Crawford, if he moves up to fight Canelo Alvarez at 168 pounds and he beats him, he will be top 2 in boxing history. Not weight classes, not of this generation or anything like that. He says he will be top 2 in boxing history. Like the top 2 boxers that this sport has ever seen. He said alongside Floyd Mayweather. Wow. So in this interview, Shakur Stevenson was live. You can see his face on the interview. And he says that Terence Crawford would somehow be top 2 greatest of all time in the world of boxing if he gets the Canelo fight at 168 and he beats him. He's saying that somehow this is the greatest accomplishment the sport will have seen. And I'm going to be real with y'all. This makes no sense at all. Listen, I didn't want to have to do this, but y'all made me. I feel like I gotta speak for boxing and speak up. It's not that I want to, but I have to. This is my obligation. Because you have people like Shakur Stevenson and Terence Crawford who frequently demean the fans and also boxing spectators and YouTubers, making statements like, oh, you YouTubers, you fans, you don't know what you're talking about, undermining the opinions of anyone who has the slightest of disagreement or don't feel the same viewpoints or didn't look at a certain fight the same way. You frequently see Bud Crawford and Shakur Stevenson like almost shoo off these opinions like, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know anything about this sport of boxing, right? Which, to each his own. But then in the same breath, you'll have Shakur Stevenson who will make a comment like he just did, that Bud Crawford would somehow beating Canelo in 2025, I would say, because if they did fight, it would probably be next year. That beating Canelo at 2025, somewhere in that timeline, at 68 would be such a triumph that he would somehow land in the history books at number 2. And I find it pretty hilarious and also ironic that Shakur Stevenson would make such a statement. This is also the guy who said that he's rooting for Berlanga to pull the upset of the year over Canelo Alvarez. And if you watch the fight, it didn't work. This is what the fight looked like. Bang, bow, pow, bang, boom, bam, wham, wham. That's how the fight looked. One-sided beatdown courtesy of Canelo Alvarez. Which, to me, the silly YouTuber, that was an easy fight prediction to make. So the point I'm making is this. I can't speak for all YouTubers because I'm not all YouTubers. I'm Ego. This is my channel, Boxing Ego. I know the job that I do. I know the respect that I've given this sport, and the sport has given me the respect right back. And I have to make these videos. People are going to say, oh, you're hating on Bud and stuff. Whatever. I'm speaking my opinion. And the thing is this new generation, especially, and a lot of content talking boxing is terrible. A lot of low quality content. You have content creators rushing out quick videos to try to get something up. People caring about being first instead of being right and accurate and providing reliable information. The era of clickbait. And then now you also have fighters who they box. They're fighters. They're the professionals. They're supposed to be the experts. But then if you listen to some of these fighters and their statements, and then you listen to a YouTuber like Boxing Ego, you're going to be right more often messing with the ego perspective or viewpoints or thoughts and predictions, right? Like Canelo Berlanga. That was such a no-brainer fight. But yet and still you have an elite fighter, a good fighter, Shakur Stevenson, who somehow thought Berlanga was going to upset Canelo. And it's not just about fight predictions, but I'm just going to, it just goes to show you that some of these fighters have relationships with other fighters to the point where it clouds their judgment. They're not going to be realistic in terms of like this, that, and the third. Shakur came up in the same, era in the amateurs with Berlanga. There's a video of them dancing to Chris Brown in like some kind of Olympic dorm room or wherever they were at, right? So are you getting a real non-biased opinion when he's saying that Berlanga is going to upset the world and he making it sound like he thinks he can do it, versus someone like me? I don't have a horse in the race. If Canelo won, that's fine. If Berlanga won, that's fine. I'm just telling you what I see. I didn't see a way Berlanga was going to get it done. It's really hard to go from this level of experience to a guy with 60 fights and this level of experience, a guy who fought Triple G 3 times, fought Cotto, a better Puerto Rican fighter who had accomplished more than Berlanga, fought the Mayweathers, fought Bivol and didn't get dropped or knocked out. And Bivol's a class fighter, right? And that's the point I'm making. So when you hear these statements from guys like Shakur Stevenson, you're supposed to be the expert. You're the pro boxer, and then you're making statements that Berlanga really has a chance, and like you acting as if you think he's going to beat him. Now, fast forward to the future, your other big bro, Terence Crawford, you're saying he'll be the greatest top 2 alongside Floyd. This is such a horrible take. This is an ice cold take. Floyd Mayweather is 50-0, right? Terence Crawford has almost as many fights, but if you look at the quality of opposition, the Maidanas, the Bertos, Conor McGregor, the Manny Pacquiao's, Canelo in 2013, who's still relevant many years later, mandatory Robert the Ghost Guerrero. He fought Miguel Cotto, Victor Ortiz, Shane Mosley, Juan Manuel Marquez, Ricky Hatton, Oscar De La Hoya, Carlos Baldomir, Zab Judah, Sharmba Mitchell, Arturo Gatti, Henry Brussels, DeMarcus Corley, Philip Nadal, Jose Luis Castillo twice, right? Diego Corrales, Emmanuel Augustus, Emmanuel Burt, right? Gennaro Hernandez. This is the quality. You look through Bud, he's a good fighter. But with almost as many fights as Floyd, the caliber of competition you're fighting and when you're fighting them is night and day to a guy like Floyd. And that's just Floyd. We can also talk about Roberto Duran. So if you're so impressed because Bud would be moving up so many weight classes from 35 to 68, right? But he's not really putting in work in the weight class. He just wants the golden ticket to get Canelo Alvarez. What about if we're comparing to historic greats with no recency bias? What about Roberto Duran? A man with, look at how many fights. He got 119 bouts. This is unheard of. 70 knockouts. He got more knockouts than Bud Crawford has fights, than Floyd Mayweather has fights. 103 and the 16 losses, right? But look how many, he has triple digit. And this is a guy who went from lightweight and gradually moved up to middleweight and was fighting better competition. The William Joppies, the Hector Camachos, of course, the infamous Sugar Ray Leonard trilogy, right? Vinny Pazienza, Hagler. Like, what are we talking about? You know what I mean? Tommy the Hitman Hearns. So to compare to history, you got to know your history and it got to make sense. Roberto Duran, if you're so impressed with guys moving up, then he's the gold standard, Roberto Duran. But then throughout history, you've had other fighters Like Julio Cesar Chavez, who has 107 fights and wins, 6 losses and 2 draws with 85 KOs. Beat prime Black Mamba, Roger Mayweather. Fought Costa Tzu, fought De La Hoya, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, I take it Frankie Randall fights, right? Pernell Whitaker. So when I'm hearing this from a Shakur Stevenson saying Bud somehow will pass all these legends by beating Canelo, it just sounds crazy. There's so many, the sport is full of immense talent, from the Muhammad Ali's and Lennox Lewis. Mike Tyson even had a run, Evander Holyfields. Those are just the heavyweights, right? To the Hitman Hearns, Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard. You also got Ray Robinson. So I feel like, look at Ray Robinson, 174 wins, 109 KOs, and 19 losses, only won by knockout, right? And that was when he was old. So I'm not understanding it. I think it's disrespectful to the rich history of this sport to say stuff like that. And I see what the play is. Shakur, that's his big bro. It's not saying that Crawford's not a good fighter, but then when you have this insane recency bias where you're trying to level up your boy as he's coming to a close, like he's like getting to the closing chapters of his career, and he's trying to get the Canelo fight, you putting it on thick. It's cap. There's nothing that Crawford can do at this stage of his career unless he fights for many more years to all of a sudden rewrite history to somehow lap all of the great talent that have left their footprints in the sand of this sport. Because guys like De La Hoya, after being an Olympic gold medalist, it was on and cracking. And he was fighting prime, the Ike Cortez, Felix Sturms, the Pacquiaos. He was fighting Bernard Hopkins, the Floyd Mayweathers, Arturo Gatti, right? Pernell Whitaker, the Mayorgas, the Shane Mosley. Like, he automatically got it cracking. There's no way you're going to be able to catch up to that. And at age 37, Crawford literally is going to be 37 this month. So it just sounds like, and the thing is, when it comes to boxing, you can't just go off of because some of these guys have L's, like De La Hoya, or, most of these guys have L's. Sugar Ray Leonard or Roberto Duran, Pacquiao. They also have L's because, see, that's what I'm saying. It's such a straw man argument. The better your competition, the higher probability or the greater chance you have to lose, because you're fighting the world's best from around the world, right? So we can't just say, oh, Bud's undefeated and some of these guys been stopped before, or some of these guys have losses. Because if Bud fought in prime legendary names when they were in their primes, like a Manny Pacquiao fighting the Margaritos and the Cotto, in prime guys, fighting a legend like Floyd, then who knows what Bud's record would be. We can only go off of what's been shown in the career that you've had. So there's no way that you're going to be able to bridge the gap, in my opinion, for Bud Crawford this late in the game. You would have already started. It's like, imagine trying to catch up to Mozart, and he was dabbling with composition and music and playing the piano, and he was 3 years old, and you're about to be 40. You know what I mean? You're pushing 40 and you're trying to bridge the gap. Or imagine trying to get as good as Kobe, and Kobe, since he was in Italy, he's been balling. He comes from a basketball family. His dad played, and he's practicing every day for 5 hours. There's no way you're going to be able to bridge that gap with so little time, because you would have had to start sooner. And that's why you see some guys that are boxers that start late, they don't have the same careers as the ones that started earlier because it's harder to do. And Bud, just last night, they called him Kendrick Lamar, a Grammy Award, Pulitzer Prize winning musician. They don't even know who he is at the UFC sphere, which was supposed to be this big Riyadh season deal. And then they're mistaking him for Kendrick Lamar. I'm Kendrick Lamar, AKA. You know what I mean? They don't even know who he is. And he's about to be 37. And the Gamboa fight was in 2014. So you've been in the game for like at a HBO known level, because the Gamboa fight was in 2014, since for the last decade at least. And you're still not a household name like these two, like the Gervontas, like the Canelos. Furthermore, Shakur is saying this because this is his boy, and you know he's has the utmost respect or whatever, but it just is cap. Canelo Alvarez is clearly fading, and that's just what it is. Yes, he's still capable. He can still beat guys, but anybody with the brain can see that Canelo Alvarez, he's not in his crispy best, because past Canelo was stopping guys. Like if he would get you hurt, he would stop you. He ain't really had the stoppage from the John Ryders, the Munguias, you know, to Berlanga. He's not really stopping these guys now, right? And even Munguia stopped John Ryder, right? So that's the reality. So you got to put, I believe in life, things must be placed in context. You got to put things into context. The context of what you're saying is Bud would somehow be top 2 ever to beat Canelo in 2025, right? But you have a Canelo that has a lot of wear and tear on his body. Since age 15, he's been fighting as a pro. He lost already to Floyd Mayweather. He already lost recently to Bivol, arguably lost to other guys like Lara and Triple G. So yes, it would be an accomplishment for a guy who started at lightweight to move up to 68 and capture a win. But Canelo's been beaten before. Mayweather beat Canelo in 2013, as I've declared earlier in this video. So to me, that's not enough to have a top rank, you know, the fights he was getting with Top Rank in a mid resume of just all the way up to like Errol Spence. And then that was even post car crash Errol Spence, who likely had issues in training camp. Fair play, Crawford still beat him, right? And then you can beat Madrimov with 11 fights, then somehow graduate to a Canelo fight. And then if you beat him, all is forgiven. You're just the top 2 greatest of all time. It just doesn't make sense. Again, life is about context. And the context is Canelo's not in his prime, right? He's not. It's just what it is. So for you to do what Floyd did when Canelo was young and 23 and bigger than Floyd and things like that, even if you were able to beat him, and I'm not saying that Crawford can beat Canelo, because I would truthfully favor Canelo at 68 with no rehydration clause to beat Crawford most likely, unless something crazy happened, right? But again, to me, it's not enough, because you got to look at the context. You got to look at where the fighters are at in that particular moment. Like, and I'm saying this with no hate. I don't have a hating bone in my body. You moving up in weight to beat a guy at a higher weight, that's cool. But it doesn't erase history of all the years you spent with Top Rank and even the BBL Prime fight that no one wanted to see with David Avocado. And then you think you can erase all of that by winning the lottery ticket to Canelo Alvarez. And if you beat him, then somehow you become greater than the Haglers and Chavez's and Duran's and Floyd's and all of the other pioneer fighters from yesteryear. And it's crazy that you have fighters like Shakur Stevenson, who again is a good fighter, and this is what he's pushing. He's pushing this. No, we get it. You're friends with Bud Crawford. That's your mans in them. Nobody's mad at that. But I, Boxing Ego, got to set the record straight, especially when I disagree, because it doesn't make sense, because I'm all about the context. Beating Canelo at this current juncture is cool, but it again, it's not enough to save you from years of not fighting. We're talking about, again, the fighters from history. They were fighting the guys not at opportune times. This wasn't opportunistic. They were fighting guys when they were in prime, like Shane Mosley, Oscar De La Hoya. Those were prime fights. So you fighting Canelo, who's, I don't know, 34 or whatever, but he's an older 34 because he's been fighting as a pro since age 15. So he has more than 15 plus years in the game, and he's starting to show signs of slowing down. Can't pull the trigger to actually stop guys. Hurt them, yes, but to stop them, no. And you think this is going to somehow like grant you this, pass to the highest level of boxing alumni? It's foolish. It's like similar to when Canelo beat Kovalev and it was FAF. I told you about that. Bro, that version of Crusher was not the same version that Andre Ward fought. I don't care what none of y'all say because y'all don't know what the you talking about. So yes, Canelo knocked out Kovalev, but this is after Andre Ward knocked him out. After Andre Ward had beaten him. After Eliter Alvarez knocked out Kovalev. And then you finally got to him. And then, yeah, it sets history. And that's what's happening. We're seeing a lot of this in boxing where it's a lot of fake history being made, right? Crawford could fight a guy like Jerome Boots Ennis, who's fully in his prime. He's young. He's younger than Crawford. He's strong. He's hungry. He's calling out Crawford. Guys like Virgil Ortiz. He just had a great, terrific fight with Boachuk. And I'm not saying that Crawford can't win some of these fights, but these are the prime fighters. Floyd at age 36, 37, the same exact year that Crawford is entering, 37, Floyd was fighting Canelo when he was 23. Bud can do the same thing. He doesn't want to fight the spring chicken that's calling him out like Jerome Boots Ennis or Virgil Ortiz. He feels like, hey, despite not getting the fights that I needed, namely with Top Rank at the welterweight division, I should somehow pass and cut everyone in line to get a Canelo sweepstake. And he's just looking for the max payout, the double or nothing, all or nothing type of bet. And it just, life doesn't work like that. We'll see if he can get the Canelo fight. I have my reservations about that, but I'm not in charge of the money to put up the fight. I just don't agree with him even getting the fight for the said reasons, because I don't think you can make all the wrong decisions, bad business bud decisions, and then try to right your wrongs in a couple fights and think that somehow you nab a position like the top 2 in boxing history because you started trying to finally get the big fights. The reality is Crawford should have been fighting the big fights for a lot longer. That's what the pioneers did. Like, imagine Floyd Mayweather and he don't get a big fight till he's age 36. That's literally Bud's career. Like, where you had some pretty good fights like Gamboa and stuff like that, but I'm talking about a big fight to turn you over. And then look at how he followed up the Errol Spence fight with a guy with 11 fights, and then arguably is tooth and nail type of fight. And then for some reason, Shakur Stevenson is such an advocate for this that he says Bud will be the greatest, like basically a top 2 GOAT should he beat Canelo. It just sounds preposterous. Erislandy Lara arguably beat Canelo Alvarez years ago, and he should have beat Paul Williams. He beat Angulo, and he just possibly retired Danny Garcia, or surely I don't think Danny Garcia will want to fight at middleweight now after that type of performance. Danny had never been stopped. So you look at guys like Erislandy Lara and what he's done. I mean, his resume speaks for itself. There's so many guys I could think of, and that's just a random name. Erislandy Lara is like a random name. But Erislandy Lara is still at age 41 fighting competition like a Danny Garcia, right? Like Castano he fought, and Jared Hurd, Vanes Matarosin, Jan Zavic, and all these guys that he fought, right? Bud Crawford is just now trying to get fights in the type of fights that he should have been fighting. So no way, no how would a win to me over Canelo in a fight I don't even really want to see make Bud top 2. And, you know, some people, the Bud buddies, they're going to say, oh, you're hating. But I think it's just a disrespect to the actual rich history of the sport of boxing for us to have such an insane recency bias. And I've never liked that. People do it with movies or music, right? There'll be an artist who comes out and let's say NBA YoungBoy or somebody come out, they got cool fans, and people start saying, oh, he's greater than Tupac Shakur. He's this generation. Based on what? Like, bro, you had Pac died at 25, and none of these new rappers have done a fraction. There's no rapper that's 25 or under that did what Pac did and had the impact and influence on the game. So I think the recency bias is garbage, and we have to have respect and know the history of what we're talking about before we start prematurely anointing things. People do it with music. People do it with movies. There'll be a movie that comes out that's solid, and then you'll see the best horror movie ever made. Like, that's some heavy shoes to fill to be the best to be the best horror movie that's ever been made. You know, it's good. You're going to have to surpass a lot of other great horror movies or crime drama or whatever the genre is. Like, if someone said this is the best gangster crime drama movie ever, you got to contend with the Godfather trilogy, especially part 1 and 2. You got Donnie Brasco, Casino, Goodfellas, The Departed, right? The Untouchables. You know how many great gangster flicks there are? You know, and if we're talking about like hood classics, you got Menace, Juice, Boys in the Hood, South Central, New Jack City, right? Paid in Full. You got so many other movies. If you were going to say like this is a top 2 hood classic, you would have to be better than Juice, better than Boys in the Hood, better than what's the one, New Jersey Drive. You have to pass so many, and that's what it's like with Terence Crawford. I understand that's your man, that's your boy. You want to root for him, but bottom line, Shakur saying that Crawford will be top 2 is absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous for him to suggest that a win over Canelo at this stage, when Canelo's clearly not in his prime, somehow he gets to pass all the great, wonderful fighters from yesteryear.